even at his very best, I never looked at Le'Veon Bell and thought he's going to be the greatest running back who ever lived. He doesn't have the same kind of fast twitchies that you think about when you think about that guy. Who, you want to say it's Jim Brown, you want to say it's Barry Sanders, someone like that. Saquon came along. He's the best running back prospect who ever lived. He's Barry Sanders, but he's 233 pounds. He's a franchise quarterback who just doesn't throw the ball, the way he carries himself on and off the field, in the locker room, in front of the media, the way he works. He's the fastest guy, but he's also the biggest and strongest guy. And he also catches passes, I think, better than anybody, at least as well. Saquon can really catch. Like Le'Veon, you could split him out wide, and they do. You could put him in the slot. I think you could probably do the same thing with Saquon Barkley.
I agree with that.
Who's also more elusive. Now, Le'Veon can chip and block and do things that Saquon can't yet, but that's why it's going to be a wrap this year, Ryan, because Saquon's working on all those things last year.
You see him in his video they posted yesterday?
And you've seen the upward trajectory, and it is a steep learning curve with Saquon. Now he has a year under his belt, and he's the whole Giants' offense right now. Saquon Barkley is about to set records this year. Le'Veon Bell's going to be tremendous. It's not a knock against him. I'm a big fan. Saquon is better in every single way that you can't teach, and he's learning in the ways that you can.
Yeah, listen, this is one of those hard conversations, right? Those hard debates that you have to have. When you even spoke of it when we were talking about Deshaun Watson, you're like, I really love this dude. I hate to say this. Russell Westbrook, when we have those conversations, I really love this dude. I met Saquon while he was still at Penn State. And when I met him, I knew who he was, right? But he didn't carry himself like the dude I thought he was. And what I mean by that is you knew that he was this big star, this extreme talent, but he was so, hey, man, I would love to, work TV. How'd you get into that? What's the league like? There were all these questions that you get from some kid who may have an opportunity to play in the NFL. Not a dude who I look at and say, you know what? This is Barry Sanders like. There's things here that are special like we've never seen. And so I love Saquon Barkley. And you go back to last year, 1,300 yards receiving, 90 catches, 720 yards. Goodness gracious, right? So you sit around and you go, man, when does that happen? Like, when do we see something like that?
And that's with Eli throwing him the ball.
Here's the thing. Calm down. Chill. Right? So I thought about it. And I was like, man, Le'Veon was good. Like, his first full season with us, which was his second year, his first full season with us, he was in shape and ready to go. I wonder what his numbers were. I was like, man, Saquon, 1,300. I wonder what Le'Veon had. It got to be close. Gosh darn it, he had more, Max. And then I said, Saquon, he had 91 catches, right? Because Eli couldn't throw it down the field. So his fail-safe was, throw it to Saquon. He had 91 catches. Man, he went for 721 on them 91. Le'Veon had 850. And so I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, there is this great talent. And we see all these things that Saquon can do physically, and we think to ourselves, well, the trajectory of it says that he should be better than Le'Veon Bell. Not so fast, because then I look at Jerry Rice and I look at Antonio Brown, two of the guys that are going to be considered the tops to ever play their position. We don't look at them and say that they're the most talented to ever do it. We don't think that they're the fastest, but they were the most effective. And now you're on this team with Sam Darnold. You're on this team that picks up Jamison Crowder. You go out and you get a simile from the Raiders. Now you've assembled a line, and you have a quarterback who's better, right? A quarterback who's moving in a different direction. You have a team that actually has healthy wide receivers in Robbie Anderson, in Quincy, say his name, I forget it, I can't pronounce it, but in Quincy Enunwa, right? So we have we have all of these guys, right, who are actually healthy. There's not the Golden Tate dealing with the suspension. There's not all these things going around.
Here's the difference.
And the last point, when Le'Veon Bell balled like that in Pittsburgh, it wasn't because they didn't have anybody else. They had a lot of people, but he was so good that even with Antonio Brown on the team, you needed to get the ball in his hand.
Actually, he was the focal point of the offense, really.
And that's what he's going to be in New York.
I no doubt, because he can catch, because he can run, he can do all the little things, no doubt about it. Number one, Eli is throwing Saquon the ball. So even when because that's the safety valve. Saquon on 5-yard passes has to come back to the ball and is basically sacked in the backfield otherwise, because he's running behind the worst offensive line in football. So that's a huge advantage for Le'Veon from the very beginning. He was born into a stable franchise with great players around him, a great quarterback, the whole thing. That has not been Saquon's lot in life so far. I appreciate your point. The guy who turns out to be the greatest, Tom Brady, isn't always the most talented. However, once in a while, a guy comes along who is by far the most talented, kind of at everything. The biggest, the fastest, the strongest, the quickest, and also has the kind of personality. You go, whoa, wait a minute. He also kind of wants to win more than anyone else. And he's also a better teammate than anyone else. And he's also putting in the work like no one else.
See Ezekiel Elliott, right? And you see what he was able to do early on in his career, right? When Michael Jordan scored 37 points in his second full year as a player, that didn't mean at some point he was going to score 50. Right? It didn't mean that the trajectory
got better than
because
that.
he got better, but the numbers didn't necessarily
So what are we arguing? Who's going to put up better numbers?
We're talking about who's going to have the better numbers and who's going to be the better player this year.
Who will have a better season? That doesn't necessarily just mean numbers. Depends
That's what it means when you play that. That's what it means when you play that position. So if Saquon gives us some great plays and rush for 1,100 yards and receives for 400, and Le'Veon goes 13-7, you're going to come on after the year and go, you know what?
Come on when you're sitting right here. When you're sitting right here, I'm going to turn to you and say, okay, Ryan, you watch them both. Who had the better year? And you're going to sit there and go, Saquon. That's what I'm saying.
It's not going to happen.
Because everything you're saying,
everything
you're saying, I'm not changing anything you're saying. Everything you're saying about Le'Veon, Saquon can learn those things. And he will, and he is learning those things. And he has the personality to do it, is my point.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.